Welcome to the Startup Show. I'm your host, John Biggs. In every episode of the Startup Show, we talk to an amazing entrepreneur about how they do what they do. We'll explore tactics, tricks, and techniques for building some of the coolest things on the planet. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Colin Godby. He's the CEO and co-founder of Dust Moto, which is making super cool electric dirt bikes in Oregon. So welcome, Colin. Tell us about this bike.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, John. Basically, we're developing an electric dirt bike that brings all of the passion and performance of a traditional gas bike, but uses the electric tech to lower the barrier of entry for more riders. So really hoping to be able to get more folks into the sport.
Now, is that it behind you? Am I looking at it again?
It is, yes. So these are a couple of the prototypes that we've developed along the journey, and we're headed towards building out the production bike this coming year.
Okay. So you're doing a WeFunder. So this is you're doing an investment round, right? Is that the goal?
Correct. Yeah. So we are building this business with the community involved. And so from day one, we've been quite open on both sharing the development journey and story with our followers, but we've also been keen on opening the opportunity for the industry and our passionate followers to be able to jump in as investors as well. So we elected to open up a WeFunder campaign as a part of our pre-seed round and bring those people along the journey. And we really believe there's a lot of value in creating those evangelists along the way. And as we get towards launching the actual product, having those highly committed, vocal advocates who have real skin in the game, we see as a big benefit.
So it's an interesting call. So usually when you do a hardware product, you usually do like a Kickstarter or something like that, and you give people a product. But you guys are doing essentially an equity round.
That's exactly right. So it sounds like there's a background noise there. So yeah, we're doing an equity round. We've started from the beginning doing basically build in public mentality. So we started very early days actually opening a traditional crowdfund campaign to allow for people to reserve their place for getting the bike. And we actually did that with a really unique premium subscription model over a monthly basis. So in a way, almost like the old kind of layaway programs to let people invest into getting their bike and committing along the journey. So we've actually kind of been quite creative, and I think it's reflective of the state of the industry. The last couple of years have been a little bit tough in the electric vehicle space, and we're notably a bit more focused on recreation than utility. And so a lot of, I would say, the traditional funding mechanisms for companies like hardware companies that are capital intensive have not necessarily been open. So we've utilized all the tools available to bring people into the mix and get this business rolling. So that's been a mix of kind of community equity raise, friends and family, angels and family office, really finding folks that have a strong passion fit. But we also have used the product crowdfund to get things rolling as well. So we've been kind of utilizing a multitude of methods there.
Yeah. Oddly enough, this has been, I think, like the third mobility company that I've talked to recently, and everybody's has a different mission. Some folks were doing powertrains and they were just getting regular investment. Some other folks were doing, I believe they were doing Kickstarter pre-order kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's interesting that you guys did the equity round. What led you to this decision? Were you not able to raise money traditionally, quote unquote?
Well, I think when we first started off, our founding team is coming out of the mobility industry. We have experience developing vehicles and scaling businesses in hardware. But even with that experience base, a lot of I think initial conversations where the idea was basically in a pitch deck and nothing tangible. Because of the state of the market, I think it was a little bit like we need to see more traction. And so we thought one of the best ways to develop traction is actually to get the mission in front of customers and see if they would vote with their dollars. And so that's why we opened up kind of the product crowdfund quite early. We leveraged sort of an initial 2D render of the bike, and we had been building newsletters, sharing our philosophy and the product positioning. And we were able to close 50 customers quite early. And that was sort of a signal of traction that was helpful in getting some of our first friends and family and angel investors on board. I will say we are in a unique positioning because of kind of the passion, recreation, enthusiast focus, right? While dirt biking has multi-billion-dollar market in the U.S. alone, let alone globally, it is seen as a bit niche compared to, let's say, transportation or mobility as a whole, right? And so I think the the effort needed to get people on board with I think what's seen as sort of a big lift, risky and ambitious, as well as something that isn't necessarily from traditional point of view kind of the most sexy bet. I think means that we've had to kind of use all the tools available. Along the journey, what's been interesting though is in the crowdfund and crowd equity, as well as sort of building the network of kind of angel investors. Um, it's basically spread effectively through word of mouth, and now we're known sort of throughout the industry, as well as some of the folks kind of on the investment side that are in mobility. So um, it's one of those, I think, more organic builds, and I think ultimately it really creates solid alignment between what our mission is, which is, bring this incredible experience to more people, with the folks that are writing checks and believe in that, right?
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. Like the idea that you can build an audience and then build a business out of that audience. What are some of the tools that you used, or what are some of the best practices that you would recommend for people trying to do this?
Yeah. So early days, we started with our own newsletter. We used some of the, I think, typical kind of subscription-based newsletter services. We used Ghost. Substack is another obvious option there. That was super helpful for us because it allowed us to build the audience before we really even had, the design or the bikes built. We also leverage, I think, on the hardware side of things, we took a really, I think, keen look at how quickly can we build prototypes and get them tested in the field. Not only for purposes of the proof of concept, we knew we needed to make sure that the bike was fun and that people would, find it desirable and actually, like I said, show up and vote with their dollars to get behind it. But at the same time, I think it's been sort of a silver bullet for us in terms of building our following. So we have a bit over 30,000 followers across our channels, without even having a production product available yet. And a lot of that comes down to actually getting the bike out in the hands of content creators. So being willing to sort of show up and make these connections organically with content creators and use their platform without a pay to play type of method.
Oh, interesting.
So I think a lot of businesses struggle early days saying like, okay, how do we get this in front of, a wider audience? Do we need to pay, for influencers? But when you don't have a finished product, that's quite hard. So when motorcycling is such a passionate, engaged audience and people love to learn about new tech, we say, let's just get out in the field and test and ride with these people and create content. So I think looking forward, we are very much a content driven kind of marketing strategy business. It's the right type of product to tell those stories. And there's numerous, folks with massive followings that we can partner with.
In terms of business structure, doing this kind of equity crowdfunding could potentially mess up your cap table, right? Did you get any advice on that, or what does WeFunder do for you guys in that on that front?
Yeah, so WeFunder packages it as an SPV. It basically is a single entry on the cap table, kind of cleans things up. There's basically a lead investor. It's basically the nominee for the SPV, handles all of the say voting duties, those sorts of things. And we've been able to, partner with WeFunder to select the lead investor. And so we've been able to position the lead investor for the WeFunder stuff as someone that's already on our board of advisors, that's really well aligned and understands investing at a deeper level, has experience both on the venture side as well as on the operational side. So for us, it seems relatively low risk in terms of, let's say, kind of creating a mess of the cap table. But totally understand, there's, I think, over the WeFunder or crowd equity campaigns in general are relatively new, right? And so I think whenever you stir the pot in terms of what's typical, there's always going to be some hesitance, kind of figuring out what this actually looks like, resistance to change because change is uncomfortable sometimes. I think it was really important for us, we're a typical Delaware, C Corp. see the importance of being able to raise more traditionally from, kind of uh, the investor pool because of the nature of the business needing, capital intensive and needing to bring in outside investors. So we thought hard about, okay, are we making the right decision by kind of raising this WeFunder flag and pushing it through? And so with the kind of diligence that we put into it, we felt comfortable. Okay, it's not as scary as maybe some people think on the superficial level, and it's worth, so the benefits outweigh the rewards of now we've got 100 plus kind of highly engaged and motivated people out in the field that are going to be advocating for us and sharing the idea with their friends, especially when the bikes start to ship. So
Yeah,
the
that was
network
always
effect was a big piece of it. Yeah.
the issue with these with equity crowdfunding, because I think it was the companies that couldn't raise traditionally that would go for equity crowdfunding. So you got a lot of cheese
Yeah.
coming through, which was, I think, was frustrating for founders because, hey, if I can get, I don't know, 500 people to invest in me versus two people,
Yeah.
why not do the latter? But I think there was always sort of a stigma associated with that. Do you think
I mean,
that's gone away, or?
yeah, I think the stigma still lingers, and I totally get it. I think that there's both sides to it. We've continued with kind of the Reg D direct investment with accredited investors in parallel with the Reg CF kind of WeFunder crowd equity stuff. I think that both have benefits and challenges. I will say that any entrepreneur looking to do the crowdfund crowd equity stuff, it is still a decent lift. It's not like you just show up and put the open sign on, all of a sudden investors start to pour in. Like, you've got to get out there and market it properly. You've got to get all of your financials in order still. You've got to do all of the typical things that an investor will want to see that's more professional. But then, yeah, like I said, you create maybe the next tier of fans, and you start to build some of the network effect, out in the public. And not all businesses necessarily benefit from that as much as we might, where we're selling a consumer product, to people out in the real world, where network effect actually matters. I think the direct investment angel side also, has its own challenges, which is, you think about like a software product, which is highly scalable because of the distribution mechanism. WeFunder is similar. You do a bunch of work, and now you kind of have low incremental cost of
Mhm.
distribution to a larger, you know, direct investment. You've got to have individual conversations every time, and you've got to close that check. While the check is likely larger, the incremental work is also still there, right? I'm still putting hours into each conversation versus, the upfront work of, WeFunder campaign build and then letting it kind of do its thing.
What do you do? What do you do to get in front of the content creators? How do you approach them?
It it sounds funny, but a lot of it is just being engaged at a personal level on our social channels. So, um, yeah, direct messages and like dropping into people's feeds has been effective. And what's interesting is we also have some partners, ambassadors, some professional athletes, Red Bull athletes, and various other influential people from within the bike and motorcycle industry, and they've helped post and get it onto their feed. And we've actually ended up having quite a few riders and content creators reach out directly. And I think it's actually a reflection of the state of the market. A lot of the motorcycle industry is based overseas. For street bikes, there's brands that are kind of located here domestically, but for dirt bikes, there's no domestic brand, no kind of hometown
Hmm.
hero to serve the audience.
Interesting.
And so what we've seen is people reaching out like, I'm so down with an American dirt bike. Like, I've been wanting to see this my whole life. How can I help? Which is, I guess, gratifying, put a lot of effort in it and have people that you really respect and I've looked up to because of their athletic prowess to actually reach out and want to be a part of the business journey is really cool.
Yeah, that's great. No, I didn't even think about that. I guess there are a couple companies like Yamaha or whoever are making these little bikes, but if you're making something in the States, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, the big four Japanese bike brands, kind of dominating global scale. The Pierre Group is the Austrian group coming from Europe. Another stalwart in the internal combustion side. What we've seen with electrification is kind of a bifurcation. A lot of bikes coming from China, actually, really leveraging kind of the pedal electric e-bike mobility landscape that's been generated there, and they're starting to make fun, kind of playful, low cost bikes. and there's a couple higher end, let's say the luxury side, maybe the Ferrari side of performance coming from Europe, but there's this massive gap of high quality, high performance, sort of domestic branded products. There's kind of this performance middle market that's wide open right now. And so while electric is pretty busy when it comes down to like credible brands that people have name recognition, it's actually quite an open landscape. And that's one of the decisions for us also in building the brand as an American brand. We knew that an American brand's not going to compete in the race to the bottom mentality of extremely low cost, products. The overseas groups are going to beat us every time at that. So we got to build a brand around performance and quality and kind of integrity and reach the community in a more direct way.
What kind of challenges are you facing in terms of manufacturing in the States?
Well, it's quite dynamic, as we've seen with recent elections, even kind of the former administrations, a lot of conversations around tariffs, and as well as incentives for domestic manufacturing, especially in kind of the EV or battery side of things. I think a lot of those incentives, grants, and other subsidies are going to larger companies than small startups like us, which is one thing that we have to figure out how to manage. Obviously, kind of the normal side of, look, it's going to cost some markup to build a battery pack here in the US versus coming out of China. But there are benefits in terms of support, in terms of shipping and handling hazardous materials, as well as for an early business like us, being able to do quality support, warranty, and those sorts of things. Having a close hand or finger on what's happening out in the field. So I think cost is always going to be a challenge. Honestly, speed is sometimes a challenge here domestically as well. Some of the partners overseas are quite motivated to move quickly, and they understand speed to market. And this is something that I think the domestic supply chain is going to have to sort of relearn, is if businesses like ours are going to succeed using a domestic supply chain, we've got to create the ecosystem that is oriented around innovating quickly and delivering quickly. And then I think the other side of it is just making sure that there is scale potential. We're sort of low to mid volume in the grand scheme of, let's say, automotive manufacturing, where automotive does millions and millions of units. We're not going to ever ship millions of units. So if we're looking at tens of thousands of units, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue still, but tens of thousands of units, there's kind of a desert in terms of suppliers
Okay,
that go in between those two sides. So
interesting. All right, very cool. So so this is launching in December, I think, right?
yeah, we've got our production pre-order launch coming up at the beginning of December, and really excited to show the world for the first time the production design of the bike. Like we said, we've been quite open with the alpha prototypes out in the world and showing the development to our followers. And now we're going to kind of show what the production bike looks like. And we're excited to build the order list so that people can get excited for next year.
All right, so that's the Model 1, and the website's dustmoto.com.
That's correct, dustmoto.com. And also we've got dust.moto on Instagram as one of our kind of main social media pages to follow.
All right, very cool. Colin, thank you for this. This has been pretty enlightening.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
All right, this has been the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next episode.